You're listening to the Happy Productive Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Dawn, business coach and founder of Freedom Builders. If you're ready to slow it on down and stop grinding, do the inner work that makes outer success inevitable, and build a soul-aligned, not soul-sucking, business and life that feel amazing and overflow with ease and joy and happy productivity, you're in the right place. If you'd like to learn more, just hop on over to my website, jenniferdawncoaching.com. That's it. Let's get into today's episode. Hey, welcome back. If you are new here, welcome. I'm Jennifer Dawn, and this is the Happy Productive Podcast. Now, I'm going to start today's show a little bit differently with an announcement. The Happy Productive Podcast, this show is shifting, not in a crazy dramatic way, but very, very intentionally. Why? Well, because I have shifted, me, and the work that I'm now doing with entrepreneurs goes so much deeper than it's ever been, and I want this podcast to reflect that going forward. So you can expect more solo episodes from me, and while we still will have guests, we're going to have fewer guests, and the ones that we do have on the show will be far more intentional. And so this shift, I've been thinking about it for actually several months, and today is the day, and it feels exactly right to start right now. And we're not going to be starting with another framework or more tactics. Oh my goodness, no. We're instead going to start with the updated messaging of me and my brand, because it is truly the core of everything. If you've ever hopped on my website, you'll see right there front and center on the homepage, it says, "Build a wildly successful you and watch your business and life take off." That's our updated messaging, and it just resonates with me so much. We've even rebranded our retreats, Wildly Successful You Retreats. But let's just sit with that for a second. What does that actually mean, wildly successful you? And I'm going to come back to that, I promise. I've been in love with business my entire life. I started my first, air quote, official business when I was just 8 years old. I would spend summers with my grandparents who were chiropractors, and they had their office attached to their home. And for those 3 months that my parents dumped us off there, those were the 3 months of my little life that made life worth living, because my grandparents were just the best of the best of the best. They had an apple tree out in the front yard, and I remember seeing those big, beautiful apples just going to waste on the ground because there were so many of them. And there were patients coming in and out of the office, and I had this idea that I was going to start a little apple stand and sell the apples to the patients. And I just saw it as an opportunity. When I presented it to the adults, they all said, no, don't do that. What you really want to do is a lemonade stand, because that's what all the kids do. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing a lemonade stand. That's so yesterday. That's what everybody does. I want to do something different. So I made my little apple stand in the front yard, and I was selling apples, and it was wonderful. And I remembered, even to this day, I remember holding those little shiny quarters in my hand, because I would sell 3 apples for a quarter. And I remember holding those quarters in my hand, and I truly believed that life was a miracle, because you could have an idea I had my idea of this apple stand, and I did a little work, and it turned into money in my hands. Like, it was just magic. It was magic. And then I grew up. I started my first software company when I was 23. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just really determined. And over the course of the next 13 years, I grew that business to 7 figures. And back then, 7 figures was a big deal. It's far more common these days than it was back then. But I built that business just by working endless hours. I remember eating ramen noodles when I couldn't make payroll, which was most of the time. I remember always putting myself very last. My family, my kids, my clients, my team, everyone was always put first, and I was last. And I burned myself out more than once. After 13 years, I just couldn't do it anymore, and I ended up selling my software company, and I wanted a fresh start and to do something different, and so I purchased a log home company. Now, at the time, I lived in Montana, so that wasn't so crazy to buy a log home company, but as fate would have it, that was the same year that the real estate market completely crashed, and I ended up having to shut my doors within a year. It was a massive, epic failure. I went from having cash in my hands to being really in debt, and I ended up taking a job back in corporate and relocating all the way across the country, and I relocated to South Florida. I became the software division president of a big multi-million-dollar manufacturing firm. And for my software division, I increased our revenues to multiple seven figures in less than 2 years. And that sounds wonderful on the outside. It looks great on paper. But on the inside, I was dying. That stint in corporate, my values, my integrity, everything got beat to shit. Frankly, they got beat to shit in that corporate hell. So here I was again starting over after my software company, the log home company, corporate. I again found myself having to start over, and I ended up relocating back to New York, or not back to New York, up to New York. I had never lived in the Northeast. I did not know anybody, and I was really just trying to figure it out and find myself again. So I ended up going to a networking meeting of a women's networking group in New York City. Now, I don't live in the city. I live north of the city right now, and going into the city, taking a train, navigating all of that was very, very uncomfortable for me. I remember I took the train into the city. I was so scared to go to this networking group. I am not an extrovert. I am definitely an introvert. So walking into a room of strangers for me felt just like an absolute hell worse than death. But something deep inside me was driving me, and I did it. And so I went to this networking group, I met the founder, and a few weeks later, she actually called me and she offered me a position of mentoring a national network of women entrepreneurs because she saw something in me that I didn't even see, that I had all this really valuable business experience. And as a female, I had grown multiple seven-figure companies, which at the time I didn't even realize that really only happens to about 2% of female entrepreneurs. And she saw that in me, and that was really amazing. And so I accepted the position, and we agreed to equity in the company along with a contract rate for some of the work that I was doing. And I was so happy to be seen and to be part of that. And I jumped in, and it felt like a gift from above. And so while I was there, I tripled revenues, I established structure, and I also found a love of coaching that I didn't know was there, just coaching and mentoring and helping other business owners. And things were just going so wonderfully. And then I made a big mistake. I did not get our agreement in writing. I trusted my partner. And when it came time for things to be put on paper and made official and for my equity to be transferred over, you know where this is going. My partner just started making all kinds of excuses and the agreements in her car and blah, 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 blah. And long story short, I ended up leaving, and I had to because she was taking advantage of me, and I didn't want to believe it, but it was happening. And when I finally saw it, I couldn't unsee it. And I made the decision to leave. And I'll have to tell you, I was emotionally devastated. I was devastated because I had built this beautiful thing. I loved the work. And here I was again with a partner who took advantage of me. But there is a bright side to the story. Even though I was devastated and I stepped away with integrity, several of the women who I had been working with, they followed me. They wanted to continue working with me. And so my coaching practice was born overnight through this terrible distress. This beautiful, beautiful gift of my coaching practice was born. And here I am, well over a decade later, going strong, taken this business to seven figures. And now I have a beautiful, wonderful team that is alongside me for the ride. And the work that we do every day gives me absolute joy. Now, that being said, even getting this business to where it's at right now took a lot of hard work with all of my businesses. I am not a stranger to the whole working harder. I'm not a stranger to grinding, sacrificing, putting it all on the line, risk, going into debt, paying off the debt, right? All that roller coaster ride, the ups and the downs and everything that having a business and being a business owner is. In fact, looking back, I've worked 10 and 12-hour days for decades of my life. And a few years ago, I started to get tired, really, really tired. And what I started to notice is that it didn't matter how many mindset tricks, and you guys, I love the mindset work. If you've been here for a while, you know. If you're new, you'll learn as we go along. I love all of the mindset work, affirmations, willpower, habits. I have read all the books. I have done it all myself. I have, of course, taught others, all that stuff. And it's wonderful, wonderful stuff. The mindset, the habits, the willpower, it's all wonderful stuff. But I found myself getting to a place where I was tired. And no matter how much sleep I was getting, no matter how much TV I watched, I just still couldn't get not tired. I couldn't relax. I couldn't really, really slow down. I couldn't feel as good as I knew was possible. Like I knew there was something there. It just felt a little bit out of reach. And no matter what I tried, I just couldn't quite get there. So the more tired I got, and it even got to the point where it was getting really, really hard to even get out of bed, I just started asking myself, what in the world am I missing? And I started looking inside, right? My entire life, and I'll share more about this as we go on through episodes. I really survived my life by surviving. I had a lot of abuse and trauma earlier on, and I learned to survive. And I was always looking outside of myself for those answers to really and truly keep me alive. But the answers that I was seeking didn't live outside of myself, they lived inside of me. They were not up in my head and all of that thinking, thinking, thinking. They were living in my body and they were living in my nervous system. Being a business owner and a coach for almost 3 decades, I've, read the books, done the courses, all of this stuff, and so much of the entrepreneurial world, it defines our success from the outside in. It's like, hit those revenue numbers. You've been to these networking groups with entrepreneurs all like, oh, my revenues are this, oh, my revenues are that, right? It's ego driven and it's also built on fear, right? Build the team, get the recognition. And that's how the story just goes and goes and goes. And guess what? I've done all that. I've hit the revenues. I've built the team and I've done all those things and still felt tired and still not felt really, really good on the inside. And maybe you've experienced that too, where you've done some or all of that as well. And you still are just like, man, I thought I would feel better when I quote got there. And even through all of this work I've done, all the personal growth on myself, I would like logically understand certain concepts, but I really didn't embody them emotionally. So for example, like logically I understood the concept and I heard experts and coaches and gurus and all these people talking about, hey, you can only grow to the level of your current identity. Okay, logically that made sense to me. Goals are not about doing, they're about who you are becoming. Logically understood that. But emotionally, my system did not really get it. And for me, the why was that nobody ever really explained to me how my nervous system worked, how safety rules get created in the first place, and how they run silently in the background. And they run silently without my conscious knowledge, but they are first in line when it comes to making a decision. When you're stuck in a pattern that just keeps repeating, those safety rules, they are first in line. They go first and they affect everything. And I didn't realize it. I thought that I could just think my way through it. And sure, I would see success and I would get some results, but not at the level I truly wanted in my heart. And when I finally started to learn these things and really understand them, and I shifted my focus inward, I started to learn and understand my nervous system and how it works. And I started to understand how my safety rules were actually driving everything in my business. Well, that's when it all shifted. I really started to understand the why behind every bad decision I'd ever made, the why behind every pattern that I kept repeating that I was stuck in, right? I started to really understand why it was so hard to get my business to the next level and the next level. I mean, it was just so hard. I started to understand why I kept having cash flow issues, why I would get into debt, get out of debt, and then get into debt again. And I really started to understand the why behind why was I so tired. Ooh, it turns out I wasn't actually resting. I was collapsing because that's what you do when you're in survival mode. You get into this pattern of survive and collapse, and you're never actually truly able to rest and turn things off. But when I slowed down, and yes, it was because I was so burned out, I couldn't get out of bed, but I slowed down and I really started to look inward and I really started to understand how my system works. I started understanding at a much deeper level that I never expected. Yes, of course, if I had only known this 30 years ago, but that's all water under the bridge. I'm grateful for all of it now and all of my lived experience. And now that I know it, I know it. And when you see it, you don't unsee it. And now I'm going to use this information, not just to continue helping myself and my clients, but also for those of you listening, hopefully I can help to shorten your curve as well. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you know that I've always believed the inner game is what matters. That hasn't changed. It's not new. What's new is that we are now going deeper. We're going to be talking about your system. We'll be talking about emotional intelligence as a genuine leadership skill, which it is, and why safety is the foundation that everything is built on. It is not the strategy. It is not the tactics. It is safety That is the true foundation. And when you have that foundation, guess what? All the strategy and the tactics, there's nothing wrong with them. They're all very, very good. But then they start to work in ways that you may never have expected when you build them on a foundation of safety. What I've seen within myself and within my clients, that when we finally do this kind of work, not the surface level mindset, not the surface level willpower, think your way through it. That's not what we're talking about. We're going deeper, deeper down to the root, down to the real stuff that changes everything. And it changes it, not just in your business, but in your whole life. That's what this show is going to be about. It'll continue to be real. It will continue to be honest. But this is about having soul aligned, not soul sucking, right? Businesses and life, and soul aligned conversations about what it actually takes to rise. This is what I mean when I talk about building a wildly successful you. We're doing it from the inside out. And when you do, you'll also be able to watch both your business and your life take off in ways that will both surprise and delight you. I'm so glad that you're here with me on this ride, on this journey. I can't wait to dive in further, and I will see you in the next episode. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to have you join us inside Freedom Builders, my coaching community for entrepreneurs who are ready to slow it on down, do the inner work, and build soul-aligned businesses that are happy, productive. Everything you need is linked below in the description, or you can visit my website at jenniferdawncoaching.com. I hope to see you there.